And again, behind each line, I give a little space for you to actually reflect on the meaning and imagine how it actually would be if that would take place. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Okay. Thank you very much. This was the meditation on equanimity. And today we're not gonna first go immediately into shamatha. I prefer to actually do a short overview of what we've done, and then at the particular point, because today we're gonna meditate on emotions, and actually, since difficult emotions are actually an obstacle to some of our cultivation of the four immeasurables, I would actually introduce that meditation at that point when we talk about how to actually deal with the antidotes. So before that, I quickly want to ask if there's any particular question that came up in the last week or during the last weeks, then I would give some space and time for that right now. Otherwise, please then just feel free to unmute yourself and you can say and ask whatever you feel to ask about with respect to the topics that we've been talking about. I don't see everybody, but I think I see nobody's raising their hands. Okay, is that fine? You can, even though I'm not here, I'm still like to be very interactive. So you can still join and still make the hand signs and whatever you like. Okay, perfect. So we are talking here as the foundation about the four immeasurables. Does anybody quickly want to say what are those four immeasurables? The four qualities that we want to cultivate up until to immeasurable space of sentient beings. Okay, I'm just gonna pick somebody, otherwise I think you don't say anything because the boundary is bigger, right? I cannot point at you. So who knows? Okay, Andrea, go ahead.
So I think I know it is the immeasurable compassion, love, immeasurable equanimity, and joyfulness.
Wonderful. So we have loving kindness, compassion, equanimity, or empathetic joy, and equanimity, or joyful effort, as it's sometimes also said. And then in the Mahayana tradition that we are now talking about, this is the foundation for us to take it further to the stepping. This is the stepping stone of reaching something which is called bodhicitta, an aspiration to attain the state of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings in order to bring them there as well. So then we had a quote by Shantideva that I often said, which was, although wishing to be rid of misery, they run towards misery itself. Although wishing to have happiness like an enemy, they ignorantly destroy it. So here, although we already have the desire for happiness and the desire to be free from suffering, but since we don't know the causes for happiness and suffering, we not only not get what we want, we also actually run towards the misery and we're destroying what makes us happy. And last time, I give a short summary about that. Last time we have been, or that in the following weeks, we have been looking at, well, then what are those happiness and the causes of happiness, and what is suffering and the causes of suffering, which we need to know in order to develop genuine compassion and loving kindness. So about in happiness, I said in general that there are two types of happiness. Does anybody remember what are these two types of happiness that we can strive for? Okay, Fabienne, do you know? You can do like this or you can do like this. Okay, half. So tell me your guesses that is coming up.
I don't remember.
Oh, that's so kind, because I love when there's honesty. Thank you very, very much. So we have short-term temporal kinds of happiness that we're searching, that we're striving, and this is usually what we believe happiness to be. We mistake this for the genuine kind of happiness, which is the second type, which we here in this tradition are mainly striving towards. So we usually confuse temporal, short-term happiness as genuine happiness, crave that, have attachment towards, and thereby actually create more suffering and destroy the happiness that we have, because the more grasping we have for an object, a person, a thing, a situation, the more we're tense and the less we can enjoy it, because we're already worried about when we're going to lose it. And then we have the genuine happiness, which is more about what do I bring to the world. And then what we talked about, what are the causes of happiness, where I said there's something which is called the 3 higher trainings: ethics, concentration, and wisdom. And this wisdom is actually the way in which we can overcome the root cause of our suffering, which then helps us to create this state of happiness within our minds. And then how to cultivate those causes was then, well, we said in both types of compassion and loving kindness, we generate them in steps. And I'm going to talk about that later. And then about compassion, we have already talked about that. We also looked what is suffering, because we say in the compassion prayer, remember, loving kindness is what? Where is he? Niklas, is he? No, wait. I cannot see like Nina and the Laxam Center, but who knows what's the definition of loving kindness and compassion? Nicholas, you go. You were there so often. I cannot hear a word.
How's that?
Oh yes, way better.
Yeah. So loving kindness is wanting people to be happy, and compassion is wanting them not to suffer.
Wonderful, including the causes of both of them. Wonderful. So, and then when we say for compassion, well, we don't want others and ourselves to suffer, what is suffering? And they are listed 3 types of suffering. Suffering here is actually, the word is actually dukkha, and therefore the word suffering can lead to lots of confusion when we hear suffering, because we say, well, I'm not always suffering. And the first noble truth, the Buddha says, well, we have to get to know that there is suffering. And then we say, well, there's not always suffering. I'm feeling good. You know, oftentimes I feel good. So therefore, we need to understand what's the word actually here coming from. It's dukkha, and dukkha is more like a state of dissatisfactory, or something is not quite right. So there are 3 types of suffering, which was, or dukkhas, dukkha of suffering, which are all the painful experience which we all know. And I think last time I asked who had like troubles last week or something, and everybody raised their hand. All of us have some sort of dissatisfactory, painful experiences. And then we not only have that, we also have dukkha of change, which actually refers to all our pleasurable experiences, which is very difficult for us in the beginning to get our head around, because we say, what's the problem? There's no problem with having pleasurable experiences, but the problem is that we mistake that for the genuine happiness, and thereby create grasping, attachment, craving, which then leads to lots of other afflictions and harmful behaviors. And it's called dukkha of change because it's only all those pleasurable experiences are very short-termed and eventually gonna cease. And then we have the third type of dukkha, all pervasive, and Therese was there, our dictionary. She last time said it so wonderfully. All pervasive compounded dukkha, or suffering, which is the potential for suffering always being there, the potential for suffering always to arise. Why? Then we come to the second point, because we have the causes of suffering. What are those causes of suffering? Here we mentioned mainly the 3 poisons. And the 3 poisons are the 3 poisons, meaning the 3 types of mental afflictions that usually guide us, which are like our little monkey mind likes to follow. Then we have Does anybody know which are those 3 poisons which are usually said? Fabio, do you know them by any chance?
I guess.
Okay, go ahead. I'm curious.
Attachment,
Attachment, yes.
ignorance,
Ignorance, yes.
and anger.
Oh, wonderful. So we have attachment, aversion, and anger, right? And here we have to ask ourselves, well, that we get to, but what is actually attachment and aversion? But the main root cause is this mistaken view of reality, which is this ignorance that we referred to, which is the main cause, which causes then all the other mental afflictions. Mental afflictions mean all the other disturbing thoughts and emotions that lead us to suffer more. And these then drive our behaviors, and these then result in suffering results. And then we have to ask, then how to overcome that? Well, here we're saying we overcome that causes of suffering by overcoming the distorted view of reality through wisdom practices. Remember, what are the 3 higher trainings? The third one is wisdom. Wisdom practices here meaning overcoming the view of thinking or believing in a very, instinctive manner, that things, persons, everything that we see and experience have an independent identity, which is independent from ourselves, believing in this independent, solid self being here, and an external, independent, objectively existent world out there. Having that as a thought, if you have that as the belief that things do exist in that manner, then you have no other choice than creating attachment and anger, because we want to be happy and we want to be free from suffering. And what does attachment and aversion do? They see an object as attractive. And then since you believe that the attractiveness exists within the object, of course you want to have it, and of course you want to grasp it. And then not only you have that, you even exaggerate the attractiveness, and then you want to have it. Similarly with aversion, you believe the object to be unattractively existing out there, so then you have no other choice to exaggerate the unattractiveness and wanting to be separated from it. So then how do we actually so once we understood that, then how do we cultivate this loving kindness and compassion? In stages. First we said with ourselves, this was kind of added. Then we have friends, anybody knows, I think, who wants to say the 5 people, the 5 steps? I don't see you. Go ahead. Don't be shy. First we do it with ourselves, then maybe with somebody easier. Who is the easiest person that we can generate loving kindness with? Okay. Do I have to pick people? Let's say Maurik. Yes. What?
Yeah. It's someone you love.
Someone you love?
Yeah.
Then?
Then it's somebody who is a neutral person. Then it's somebody you have an aversion to. And then once you've reached that point, you can just include everyone. So
wonderful. Thank you. Such a beautiful explanation. Thank you very much. Exactly. So these are the stages that we try to cultivate that through. So then the typical obstacles I've already said, well, we have the ignorance as the main one, but then we also have this attachment and anger, or let's say more aversion. And I already said, what's the definitions? The definition of aversion is a mental factor that sees the object as unattractive, exaggerates the object's unattractiveness, and thus wishes to harm the object. And then the misconception here that often people have is, I need this anger, because otherwise how would change come about, right? We need to demonstrate right now because people don't believe that climate change exists. So we have to go out and I have to be angry. But we don't need that. Actually, we can use compassion, and people believe that being compassionate means being like a sponge, you know, that you can, that it soaks everything in and it's soft and you can squeeze it, and it cannot be, you know, strong actions. But we can, even with compassion, use strong actions, but it's not coming from a state of, you know, neediness. And I really like that, you know, thinking of okay, why do I want to change something about the world? Do I want to change something about the world because I'm needy and I want the world to be the way that I want it to be? Therefore, I need to fight the world and say, you have to be how I want you to be? Or am I going to do something for the world because I have something to offer? I say, well, I think I know something that I can offer with you. So therefore, I want to do something, want to give something. And the motivation is a completely different one. Do you see the difference? You can do like this or like this. Okay. Wonderful. So then the opposite of anger, by the way, is patience. Or this is one of the ways that we want to deal with. Instead of anger, we want to deal patiently with respect to a difficult situation. And people, again, think that being patient means that you're like a doormat. But this doesn't mean it. It just means that you're remaining with a calm state of mind in the face of difficult situations. So just because there's a difficult situation and you have a calm mind, doesn't mean that you have to, just lay back and do nothing. You can become very active, that's fine. But the motivation behind one is a completely different one. And people believe that anger is actually something strong, and being patient is something, I think there's also still this idea of what a man is. People believe it's manly and strong if you get angry. It's just like only from the social I don't know, ideas it's brought into people's minds. But actually, the real strong person is a person, like, patience is a sign of strength. Wanting to be strong means you can remain patient. You are strong in the sense of you have control over your mind. And then you are in a difficult situation. If you are able to remain calm, how much more will you be able to influence the world? Actually, anger is the sign of weakness. And then attachment is the opposite kind of, or uses, instead of an attractive, instead of an unattractive, the attractive object. So again, it's a mental factor that sees its object as attractive, exaggerates the object's attractiveness, and thus then wishes to possess and hold it. So, and here a lot of people then believe, I need attachment in order to enjoy the relationships that I'm having, in order to keep people close to my heart, in order to be, creative also. Glenn Swenson likes to say, people think often that we need attachment, we need the sadness, and I myself was doing a lot of theater before, and I believe too that I need my afflictions in order to be creative. But actually, once you kind of dissolve those afflictions a little bit, you have way more space for creativity to come up. So it's a beautiful process, actually, once one is courageous to let go a little bit. So actually, once you let go of attachment, you enjoy much more whatever you have, because you're not boring. And through boring, you destroy all of that. So, and again, attachment as well as aversion is based on this basic misunderstanding of reality. So then, how do we deal with those mental afflictions or mental disturbances? And here I want to say quickly that actually in Tibetan, there's not a real word for emotion, and we talk so much about difficult emotions. So there is not a real word, but since we use it so much, and we say, oh, I feel emotional, I feel so sad, my emotions are so down, I take it on. Yeah. So then there are different ways of dealing with them. The first thing that we need to understand is to get a clear understanding what is actually aversion and anger, aversion, anger, and attachment, grasping. What are those? And we already, and then by looking at them, seeing that they're actually not desirable, seeing that they're having a lot of disadvantages, and thereby bring suffering to us. So only once you have that, you can move on and say, I don't want that. I want genuine happiness. So getting this feeling of, I don't want to be continuously driven by those emotions, and then it goes up and down and up and down and up and down and up, and the fear and hope cycle keeps running around. So when we think about how we are cycling in this way, we then can think, I don't want that anymore. I've been doing that. If we don't believe in rebirth and reincarnation and all these, Well, I've been doing this my entire life, and I don't know how old you are. For me, I'm still very young, but even these years are really enough because I know how painful this up and down is. So, but if you then even think long term, wow, incredible, incredible. And we're still here with the same up and down. It's incredible. So don't we want something better for ourselves? Yeah, we want to have this genuine happiness that we could cultivate. And the thesis is, again, being like a goldsmith, trying to really investigate, is this actually possible? And here we're saying, yes, it is. It is actually possible to overcome mental afflictions. Why? Because they're based on a misunderstanding of reality. So that's quite amazing. That's quite good news. So even though we're suffering, it's really good news because they're based on something, on a childish idea. They're based on a childish, but anyway, that's a topic for a whole different course, which I really would like to encourage you to study. But by us cultivating this wish for genuine happiness, that is one way that we can overcome attachment and aversion, because we recognize there's no need to put so much emphasis on those short-term happinesses. And then another step, and this is where we're going to now start our meditation on emotions, meaning our shamatha meditation on emotions, is just using basic awareness practice, using shamatha practice, using mindfulness practice. Then we can also use antidotes as meditating on impermanence, meditating on emptiness, this big topic, and then meditating also on loving kindness and compassion, transforming those negative emotions into loving kindness and compassion, and later coming to a practice which is called Tonglen, which, if we are very, very fortunate, we will manage to do at the last session. But in order to first do this mindfulness practice with negative emotions, disturbing emotions, this is what I would like to do in the next 15 to 18 minutes. Up until here, is there anything that comes up? Any questions, or can we move on? I don't see anyone. Oh, Nicholas, you have your microphone unmuted. Does it mean you have a question, or you just have it unmuted because you don't? Okay.
Yeah. Can I ask something?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just a remark from my side.
Yes.
When you were coming to the point, cultivating compassion, and instead of showing lots of anger. I don't know,
Yes.
can you see the camera? Yes. I have to say I struggle a bit with that, especially if you look around the world, and I think other people struggle with that as well. Being a Buddhist, I mean, because there is so much injustice, and at some point you have to show probably anger or some other signs to change something in the world, or at least that's sometimes my perception.
I totally agree. I totally agree that we need to be active, but there's no contradiction. So, and I think thank you very much for bringing that up. Because did you all hear that, what he said? Okay. Well, I think, again, I personally grew up in a very political family. My brother is very left. My mother was a full-time feminist and led first lesbian choirs, and my father took us to demonstrations. And I think that is very important. The problem is that if you are faced with injustice and you lose your mind through anger, you become yourself subject to the problem and not the solution. The way that we want to get to the solution is by having an intelligent, calm, clear mind. And it's difficult. We're not saying it's easy. It's simple to understand, but it's not easy. So obviously it's difficult to be able to see strong injustice and remain calm in the mind and active with body and speech. Very difficult in the beginning. But this can be trained. So now imagine you would be faced with you know, or just think of one scenario that you find right now, you feel a lot of injustice. Let's think of people of color and their discrimination and racism that still exists. And you see that in front of you. You see somebody, let's take that. You see in a train, you know, we have this independent control, right? And when I travel from city to city or from country to country, how often are there those controls? And then the police comes and then they control whom? The people who look, who are any kind of color, or who wear dreads. I don't know, Therese, maybe you have experienced this once, because they expect you to smoke some weed, you know? So they think you have something in your back. So there are all these kind of prejudices. And so then either you have two chances. Imagine now those people come and they say, hey, you, show me whatever, you know? They open their bags and do these things. And you see that and you think, there are like 30 other people and they are not being asked. Why not? That is so unfair. And then you have two choices. Either you get angry and, you know, you stand up, your rage is coming, your heat, you know, the heat is coming up, your body tenses, and you are about to explode and say, stop, you know. Obviously, that is good in terms of, you know, you're showing an action, you're not careless, you're actually having a caring for the person who is being, you know, unfairly treated. But now imagine the second scenario, you're sitting there and look at the situation and you think, how much suffering? I need to be clever now. What is the most skillful thing that I can do? You know, then the way that you're going to speak with the police people, the way that you're going to speak with the person who has just been an abuse of power is going to be much more influential. And you yourself don't lose your peace of mind. So you're not going to be, you know, one off. You are able, with compassion as a driving, strong, motivating force that wants you to move. But compassion is not something that you're going to drain off. And there's a different also here, which I'm going to talk about later. Otherwise, we're going to go too much away. But compassion is something that it's an active power that wants you to move, that wants you to do good things. It's not something that you sit here and feel good and feel, you know, pity or poor them. It's actually something very active. So if you have that, then you can do that repeatedly. You can again and again and again and again, and you have the strength to continue. Whereas anger is exhausting. You get angry, and after, I don't know if you've ever had this. In the past, when I was like, I don't know, a child, anger is not like at least this full-fledged screaming anger is now, thankfully, not a big, huge topic of mine anymore, even though I have like this inside anger, you know. But as a child, I used to have this very explosive anger sometimes. And then I could, you know, pump against the wall and be angry. And then afterwards, you're exhausted. And that's now the extreme. But even on a small scale, anger is destroying yourself, it's exhausting yourself. So thinking long-term, that's not going to be sustainable. And we have to think long-term and in a sustainable manner. How can you be sustainably part of the positive change? And another thing with anger is that it destroys your peace of mind. Having not a destroyed peace of mind, you're not going to be so intelligent. So if you need to speak to politicians and need to, convince them, if you're like a screaming child, they're not going to be convinced by that. Whereas when you show them clever, you know, clever reasons and show them clever, you know, you kind of, if you yourself seem happy, people want happiness, and people are attracted to people who are happy. So if you yourself have this kind, nice atmosphere around you, they're going to listen to you much more because they think something is right with them. So your influence is bigger. And then another thing with respect to compassion, I said earlier, you can get a burnout from anger. And sometimes people say, I also have compassion burnout. But compassion burnout is actually not compassion burnout, it's empathy burnout. Because we don't take it to the next step. Again, compassion is not an emotion, compassion is an aspiration, which is a driving force. The empathy, which is a step below, before that, it's the basis for that is that you can feel the other person, that you can understand that the other person is having pain, having sort of suffering experiences, and then you can empathize with that. You can feel what they are feeling. And then the step on top of that is, oh, I want to do something about it. I want to do whatever I can about it. May that person have freedom from suffering and the causes from suffering. So that's just a little excerpt because, you know, people sometimes say, well, also compassion is draining and tiring. No, it's the empathy. If we don't take it to the level of compassion, that can become draining, and then we get this empathy burnout, but not a compassion burnout. Did this help a little bit, or is there still something that you want to argue about?
Oh, that helped a lot. Yeah, okay, thinking about it. I don't know how to describe it, but sometimes my feeling about it shifts a bit. You know, sometimes I see the let's say the downsides of it, and sometimes let's say some part of me tends more to what you're saying. But sometimes I also have a different perspective on it. So yeah, but the clarification helped a lot. It makes sense.
Maybe one more point to that again that I want to stress is there's a big difference between how we act with body and mind and what is our mental state. We're not saying you should not be upset about things, but we want to be wisely upset about things. And there's one big thing that helps here, maybe with respect to anger. There's something which Glenn Svensson likes to call cognitive fusion, and I believe he has it from somebody else. I think it's a term that is actually used in Western psychology as well. Who of you have heard about that already? Have anybody of you heard about it already? Okay. Cognitive fusion is basically saying you take the object, or you take a person, and this person is behaving in an injustice wrong way. Let's say this person is, again, let's take the example of the person who is always picking on that one POC, person of color, yeah? So then we can say, okay, there is a person and there's the wrong action of being racist. So then usually what we do, we fuse them together and we say, bad person is bad. So now what we want to do here is separate them and say, there's a person and there's a really bad action. You can be upset about the action. You can judge the action. You can say that is really bad. What a bad action. I really have to go against the action. But you don't want to go against the person. Because what? The person, just like yourself, wants to be free from suffering, wants to have happiness. And the way that that person is behaving might be really destructive also to themselves. And you also eventually, and this is something, just imagine, even though it sounds maybe very difficult for us at the beginning, but we can train our minds to look at a predator who is doing something terrible to us. And this is what the great yogis of the past do. Look them in the eyes, and when they do something bad to them, the only thought that they have, oh dear, how can I help you to free yourself, to free you from the causes that you create for your own future suffering? Because whenever a person does something wrong, they create suffering for themselves. And actually, the reason why they're doing something like that is because they're still suffering, is because they're so confused, is because, remember Shantideva's quote, they themselves want to be happy, but they destroy the causes of happiness. They themselves want to be free from suffering, but they've run towards misery itself, ignorantly. Why? Because they didn't get it. And again, being compassionate doesn't mean you sit down and do nothing. But we need to do the training. And this we do on the cushion. And then you can use the active force that anger might bring you, the force of something is not right, and then keep that energy, transform it into compassion, and then act with that. There's something not right. It's true. The person's behavior is not right, but you separate them. So we don't want cognitive fusion. We want to separate them. And there's a great quote by Shantideva I don't have it by heart, but I could try to paraphrase it. Where it is, you know, if a person hits you with a stick, who of you knows this one? I think Nina and Jeff definitely know. Andrea also knows. Wonderful. So Shantideva, there's a quote by him also in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, a guide to Bodhisattva's way of life, where it says, you know, if a person hits you with a stick, whom are you getting angry at? Can anybody give me an answer?
Stick.
Huh? Really? Wow, you're so advanced. You look at the stick and scream, bad stick, bad stick. I don't. I would say, what are you doing to the person, not to the stick, right? I'm not speaking to the stick. Because I believe that the stick, that the person has been intentionally, the person has been doing the intention of hitting you. Even though the stick is actually the thing that hurts you. But you believe the person was the one who was moving the stick. So similarly, then we can understand, well, by what is the person moved? The person moved is by their anger, by their attachments, by their craving, by their disturbing emotions. So if you need to get angry at those emotions. Get angry at the harmful thoughts. That's the way, you know, if you really cannot let go, at least separate them. Get this angry energy against the emotions and think, I really need to get rid of those negative emotions also in the person. How can I do that? You know, and then you get these questionings, and then it's very easy. Then it becomes easier to open up your hearts. Yes, Fabio.
Yeah, just one stupid question. But then, from this kind of perspective, should the person that hit you with the stick should be punished or not?
Oh, certainly. In lots of cases, the person should be punished and given help. I think one thing that is missing a lot in our, you know, how do you call the system? Like in our judgment system, is that we put people away and punish them, which I think is helpful and necessary because one, you need to protect the people, and two, you need to protect the person from doing harmful actions to, you know, that will lead him to further sufferings. So the person should be punished. But if you are, it depends, you know, it depends really on how much do you know what this person needs. But sadly, we are in a situation, I personally am, that I don't have like clairvoyance where I can see the mind of the other person, you know. But if you have if you have this kind of skill, you can behave in all kind of actions. Buddhism, especially when you come to Mahayana Buddhism, in the you know, in the foundational Buddhism, in the you know, in the Theravada, or like more in the Pali tradition, as His Holiness likes to call it, it's quite like, especially with the rules, it's quite black and white. This you do, this you don't do. When you move to like the Bodhisattva path or the you know, the Sanskrit traditions that we are finding ourselves in, also the vows become all a little bit more grayish, because you're always acting in dependence on what's the right thing for that person. So that can vary very differently depending on that person. But yes, in general, yes, punishment is part of our system of protecting people and protecting the person from themselves. But then what is missing is giving them tools to change themselves, allowing those persons to become better persons. And often a lot of people right now who are put in prison, there's been studies about it, that people become more criminal when they are being in prison. So something is wrong with our system there. Why don't we try to find a way in which people become more peaceful, more loving, more careful, more supportive to actually re-enter the how do you say, the society? This is my thought on that. Yeah. Anything else on that? So I think we can start. I would say some quick things about this mindfulness with emotion, because it can be scary for some, you know. We already have negative emotions. Why do I want to now focus on them even? So, but actually it's a relief to be able to do that. So who does remember how, it's the same techniques that we use right now that we did last time with thought meditation. So now the object that we choose is the emotions. So we're now here focusing, and that's important. That's something that I suggest you to remember, is try to remember that we're watching the emotion itself, not so much what's the object of the emotion. So even though that maybe especially when we want to, do now here emotion meditation, we want to train. So we can see meditation as a training period for which we then can go out in our day-to-day lives and then actually act that out in our day-to-day lives. Because I think, okay, who of you were emotional in the last 3 days? Oh, Andrea was very calm. I said, who of you were
Sorry, no, my internet connection is not really good.
Okay.
Sorry.
No
I'm sorry.
So, right. So all of us have the emotions coming up during our days, right? And I could say, ask you even who of you were emotional today. I believe most of you would raise your hands. So therefore, we now want to use the meditation session to learn how to deal with them. And what are usually emotions that you face? For example, in the last 3 days, what were usually emotions that you faced? Christine. What were an emotion that you had to deal with this week?
Anger.
Anger. Therese.
Fear.
Fear. Fabio.
Anxiety.
Anxiety, fear. Romy. I don't hear you at the moment. I don't know why. I still don't hear you. Okay. Well, I now have to deal with confusion and worrying, but I cannot hear Romy. Okay. Nicholas, what was your emotion that you've been facing this week?
Yeah.
Also fear? Andrea? One of the many.
Many. Yeah, fear, anxiety, also
Fear,
love.
anxiety. Yeah. And Marek?
Disappointment, does that count?
Yeah, why not? Of course. And then you three. Let's go from Jeff onwards.
Frustration.
Frustration. Stress.
And for me, all of them.
All of them, right? Right.
Fear, anxiety, anger.
So I think whenever I ask you that, you have thoughts or situations coming to your mind, right? So please use them in the next meditation that we're gonna meditate on. We have all these emotions. Look, and this is something beautiful. A lot of you said similar things. Oh, did I miss somebody who's not having their video on? I don't want to miss somebody. I want to be disrespectful. I think everybody. Okay. So, right, we cannot empathize with that because we know how painful these emotions feel. So that's actually one reason to feel equanimity. We know we are all in the same wave, up and down, and do horrible things with that, doing horrible things to ourselves, treating ourselves so badly, and having the monkey mind telling us what to do. So then let's take, for example, anger. I think that was the first emotion that was mentioned. Christina, I think you said anger, right? How does anger feel? Does anybody, or you can say other things of your emotions. Maybe you can throw in two different things that happen when you're angry. And anybody, now I'm not going in order. You can just throw something in if something comes to mind.
Okay.
How do those emotions feel?
Lack of control.
Lack of control. What happens with your body when you feel angry? Tension. Or anxious? Tension,
it feels like it's pushing upwards, like
yes,
also up to the head.
right.
Heartbeat.
Heartbeat. What else?
In your gut.
In your gut, right?
In the stomach.
Right, right. Well, you all know what it is. A lot of people also have headache, you know, feeling fire from the inside, you know, feeling the blood going up. Same with anxiety, different than with anxiety. There are similar things like tension, and you know, a lot of people feel it in the shoulders or feel like shaky. So what we do with the emotion meditation, you are welcoming them and just watch them. You're just watching and being aware of those uncomfortable sensations that come along with the emotion. And here again, the main focus is the emotions and the sensations that come along with them and the thoughts that come along with them itself. But it's mostly now here coming, the main focus is on the sensations that come along with the emotion and not so much the object of the emotion. But if the object comes, let's say, I've been so angry with my employee or with my, I don't know, boss, or fearful about losing somebody, because let's say my boyfriend or girlfriend is, you know, we had a fight and now I'm afraid to lose them, or I'm afraid to have not enough money, or, you know, you have the situations coming up in your mind. So, you know, we can, if right now you're not already feeling emotion, because I've already kind of set you up for the emotion to come up, sorry for that. But even if the emotion has not yet come up, you can use that situation as a gentle, soft trigger to trigger the emotion coming up, and then stop focusing on the object and just watch the emotion itself. And then when, for example, the object is anger and you have an enemy that triggers the emotion, and the enemy or the fearful thing situation comes up in your mind, then you don't have to block it. It just appears, but it's not the main focus. So the symptoms of the negative emotions most probably may stay. So the symptoms, meaning the tension, the whatever, they most probably stay in the beginning. And then you learn how to use those feelings to transfer to happiness. So you're learning to use the feelings of unhappiness to come to happiness. And that's the self-antidote. When you just imagine the fact that if you are having this open acceptance of looking at the emotions, and you even are able to using them as a support for your shamatha practice, what are you having to be afraid of in this world? You've learned to deal with the 5 objects. You've learned to deal with pain even. You've learned to deal with thoughts, at least in theory, even though we are not yet familiar with them, but you know now possibly the tools. Now even emotions. Well, okay, I use the emotions as my object of shamatha practice. How wonderful. And there's one great teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you know, when he speaks about, for example, he speaks about compassion and loving kindness. He makes everything possible to transfer it into compassion and loving kindness. But for that, in order to be able to do that, we first need to be a little bit, you know, calm with our emotions and having an acceptance with our emotions. And therefore, as another great teacher, Mikyo Rinpoche, he said he had panic attacks. So a lot of you said anxiety and fear, right? He had strong level of panic attacks. Up until he was, I think, 13, he still had panic attacks. Up until a point where he said, okay, I'm going to use them as my object of shamatha practice. And me, myself, I, for example, sometimes, you know, when I'm sitting here, I can feel I'm getting red. Not because I'm angry, not because I'm fearful, but because, you know, I have to concentrate and maybe get a little bit tight and maybe a little bit tense. So I have like red cheeks, you know, and I think 2 sessions ago, when there were many people, suddenly there were like a new people, and I was, oh God, and I recognize I'm talking more quickly and I'm getting hot and I'm getting a little bit anxious, and I recognize, that's interesting. And then I did like a very short moments and reminded myself of this emotion meditation. Such a relief. The emotion is still there. I was still red. I'm still red right now. But you look at it, and then it doesn't have an effect on you in such a way. You have a gap. Because usually what we do, we believe we are the emotion. We believe I am the anger, I am the fear, I am the frustration, I am the anxiety. But now we're learning how to have the gap, to just observe it. Okay, I'm being with it. So in this situation then, when a difficult situation comes, we don't have to worry, because we know we can just look at it, but we're also not becoming careless. We're still trying to find a solution for the problem. And here there's something that I really like from Shantideva. I'm again paraphrasing it, but I liked it. This was the first time when I went to India, but when I was 16, I went to India, and at that time it really struck me, this quote. If you can change something, what's the matter of getting, and I say it in the Indian accent, because this is the way I learned it, because when I was in India, I was staying with an Indian family. So I have a lot of Indian accents sometimes coming. I'm very, very sorry. So the way that I learned it was, if you can change something, what's the matter of getting upset? If you cannot change something, what's the matter of getting upset? So, and me having that with such a joyful, even with the accent coming to it, when a worrisome problem comes up, I think of that and immediately a sense of relief. Because it's so true, no? So think about that. In case you haven't heard about that quote yet, please deeply think about that quote. So now choose an emotion. Please not choose, you don't necessarily have to choose the strongest emotion in the beginning. Choose something that you know you might be able to work with. Choose something that might be uncomfortable, but still something that you don't immediately have to, burst out in tears and, cannot sleep the whole night. So be gentle with yourself. So then, trying to prepare yourself, okay, I'm getting ready for that meditation, and then focusing on it. So that's what we're going to do. And then often afterwards, it doesn't necessarily have to feel particularly good, and that's okay. So we do it in small steps. And also, again, don't try to expect the emotion to go away. And there are 4 main steps that we're going to do it in. And I think instead of talking about it, we can just do it. And then later I'm going to, one more time in a philosophical way, delineate those 4 steps. Or do you want to know the 4 steps before? We make a vote again. Who is in favor of first going through all the 4 steps? 1, 2, okay, 3. Who is in favor of going over the 4 steps afterwards? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 1. Okay, then please find a nice and comfortable position. And again, if you find it difficult to concentrate with the screen in front of you, you can make it black or close your eyes. And then just for a few moments, rest in just being. Don't worry about what's going to happen, what's going to be in the future. So just for now, you can use the breath to anchor yourself into the present moment. Just resting in knowing the breath. And then, if you are emotional right now, wonderful. You're very lucky and fortunate. Because in order to do emotion meditation, you need an emotion. And if you are not having a strong emotion at this very moment in time, I'll give you a few moments to maybe recollect the situation that happened maybe in this week that made you emotional. And then gently, softly, allow that emotion to be there. Maybe you feel some sort of tightness or tension within your body, or very strong thoughts coming up with that. And just watch what is happening in your body and mind. Watch and allow yourself to just be with this discomfort. Be like an observer, like a scientist. Watch what is happening. And if the emotion disappears, then you can rest in that gap and you're in open awareness. And then if the emotion stays, then just take it as it comes. Think, that's interesting. Just learn to watch the emotion itself. And if the emotion gets too strong or intense and bigger, and it becomes overwhelming, then you can make a short break in the sense of using a different object. So maybe you can, for some time, go back to listening to sound or focusing on the breath or just staying with open awareness. And once you feel calm enough, again, invite that pictures and images of situations and memories that trigger an emotion that you are capable of dealing with. And see how, like a scientist, you can just watch. And again, if the emotion is getting big and strong, maybe you can also watch the fear or the aversion against the negative emotion. The fear and aversion or the anger against the anger that you're feeling. The anger against the fear of the fear. So see what emotion is lying behind it. And try to soften around it by inviting the emotion to just be there. Just 2 more minutes. Allow the emotion to be there and just watch. Now in silence. Okay, then we can finish this meditation. You can open your eyes for that and just for a few moments rest and open awareness. You don't have to do anything. Allow yourself to just be. Be in the presence of being. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We can complete this meditation. How was it? Is there anything? No emotion came. Big emotion came. How was it for you?
I thought it was very interesting for me because I remember you said when we did the pain meditation that when you really get focused in on the pain, you start to realize it's not just one place, it's maybe lots of little pains. When I got focused in on my emotion, I realized the emotion itself isn't really what I thought it was. It's like, I don't know, it's lots of different emotions, like a cloud made of little particles of different emotions that all combine into one kind of feeling, I guess, or emotion, or whatever you want to call it. So I just found that really interesting because you can break it down, and it just, yeah, it kind of was just like, okay, you know, trying to make something of lots of little things. That, interesting.
Oh, that is very true. I mean, there's really a point to what you're saying. One can do the same, nearly the same meditation and transform it into wisdom practice. Because you're completely right. The emotion itself is a conglomeration of many different parts. And which part is the emotion, right?
Right, exactly.
But this is made...
Go on.
Go ahead. It's important for you to...
Yeah, I was just going to say that like as that process was happening, I started to feel kind of compassion towards myself. I was like, oh, actually, you know, it was involuntary almost. It was like, oh, you know, poor me for feeling that way, and
yeah,
a nice way to make myself feel.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that.
It was very interesting. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anything that you've experienced, or anything that you're saying, wait, for him that he had such a good experience, I didn't feel anything? Or maybe somebody else, I felt horrible. You know, what are different experiences that you had? Remember, there's no bad meditation.
I was surprised by how much it moved around within a relatively short amount of time.
What do you mean by that?
I mean,
moved around.
One emotion felt very strong, then a degree of relief, and then a sense of it slipping into another. There was a certain degree of calm, but only in knowing that there's more to see, I guess.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing, because again, here in meditation, what's the essence of meditation, Therese?
Awareness.
Awareness. So there's no right and wrong or better or worse meditation as long as you're having awareness. So here there are 4 steps that I would like to tell, which are very helpful with this meditation, especially when you do it yourself. The first thing is we always, and this can be applied to any kind of meditations, especially difficult ones. Also when we do analytical meditations with, for example, an enemy or a difficult person, then also emotions come up and it can be very strong resistance. So there are 4 steps that help us here. The first thing here when we do awareness meditation is to watch. So that's our main focus. When we do loving kindness meditation, we just try to generate loving kindness. So we try to apply whatever meditation technique we're trying to use. In this time, it's just to watch. So then there are 2 things that can happen. Either the emotion disappears. That happens as, for example, Morik says, the different things happening, or Maurik, sorry, and then now I spoke, with the Indian. So what can happen is that when you watch, it disappears. So then you're resting in objectless shamatha. If the emotion stays, this is the same as we said last time, right? When the thoughts, and there was a whole discussion, when the thoughts suddenly disappear, what do you do then? Well, then you just rest with the absence of the emotion. You rest within the gap. You rest and continue just being aware. Then you have awareness again. Then what do you do when the object stays? Well, just take it as it comes. Think, oh, that's interesting. Learn just to watch the emotion. And by doing that again, you're out of the river. You're becoming a little bit separate from the emotion, and you generate like a space in which you can just observe without being in it, without being carried along with it. And here maybe it's important to know, this is why it's so important to try to focus really on the emotion itself rather than the objects that are coming up. Because by you just looking at the emotion itself, you're not fueling it anymore. Because you're not giving them any more fuel for continuing to grow. So eventually the emotion will disappear. But usually what we do is switch back to the object, then we fuel it again, and it becomes bigger. So then what happens? What do we do when it becomes bigger? Then we do the second step. The second step is try something different. If it becomes too overwhelming, too much, take another object. Take, for example, the breath. Take just open awareness. Take listening to sound. Anything that helps you at this moment to calm down a little bit, to prepare yourself again, to do the next step, to again try. So then you have calmed your mind a little bit, and you again try to invite the negative emotion. Then again, if it becomes too overwhelming, what do we do then? Then we step back, which means, wait, I have 2 pencils somehow. I didn't bring them here. Wait, give me 1 second. Okay. So this is red or pinkish, or we can use my face, it still works. Representative for anger, yeah? So now what we usually have when anger, or let's take fear or panic, anxiety coming up. So let's say we have that. What we usually have, we have another emotion lying behind it, which says, I don't want that. Nobody wants to be afraid. So usually what we have, we not only have one emotion, we have a second one, which is the aversion against the a fear, against the anger, against the anxiety, against the panic, against the frustration, against the disappointment. That is usually what we're having. So then if this becomes so strong, we can start focusing on the second one that lie behind it. We see, oh, there is actually aversion against the first one. Only by starting to accept what is there, we start gaining a platform for you actually to deal with that. If you're having so much aversion against this one, you're never going to be able to touch this one because you're still fighting against the second emotion which lies behind it. So therefore, by you allowing, and this is the, how do we come to the point that we only have this one, and this disease, this diseases? How? Through having acceptance for the first emotion. And this we only get once we really welcome it, and the symptoms stay. The emotion is still there. But by looking at the second one, which is lying behind, and dissolving it through saying, oh, I'm having aversion against this one. I'm trying to just observe the emotion, inviting the emotion of, this is my object of shamatha practice right now. This one dissolves. The one that doesn't want the negative emotion dissolves. So then you're only having this one. So you're looking at the fear of the panic, the resistance. Look at the resistance itself. And then if it's still too much, you stop, take a break, do physical exercise. Physical exercise is very good. We shouldn't underestimate taking care of our bodies. Eating enough, eating not too much, sleeping enough, or taking a nap. You know, doing a break, stopping the meditation, it's fine. We don't have to torture ourselves. It's an act of loving kindness to ourselves. So these are the 4 steps. Does anybody, did you understand what are the 4 steps, or should I say them one more time? Who understood what are the 4 steps? Okay, I should say it again. Watch, or just being aware, is the first one. Second one, try something different, meaning use a different object. Coming back. Third, step back to the resistance against the negative emotion. Step 4, take a break. One more time, watch it, just be aware. Try something different. Stepping back to the resistance against the negative emotion, or just short-term step back. 4, take a break. Okay, now who got the 4 points? Oh, wonderful. Great. So these are the, these are with respect to emotion meditation. Any questions on that? Okay, if there are no questions. Right. If there are no questions, since it often does not necessarily have to feel so great after those kind of meditations, I don't want to leave you with this uncomfortable feeling. So therefore, one other thing that I want to say before that, as you said, Maurik, an analogy that comes to mind with respect to what you said is in emotion, and this is not coming from me, but I really like this. An emotion can seem huge, big, giant, I think you say in English. What are other extreme words that you can use? Like super big and overwhelming. But interestingly, the moment you zoom in and try to investigate what is it actually, it's more like shaving foam. You know, when you put like shaving foam, it becomes big. You know, you do like, and then it becomes big. Or I think in the past, my father still, when I was young, he didn't have like the one, you had to do like this in order to have like shaving foam, but still it would get a little bit big. So, but if you zoom in, it's like actually made out of very many bubbles with lots of air inside. And those bubbles, if you look inside, they are really just empty. There's air inside. There's no big substance there. Because it's in the end a creation of our minds. So just take this to heart, or take this to your mind and think about it. When you're feeling this strong fear and terror that these emotions can create in our minds, you know, try to sometimes remind us, it's great. And here again, take it with humor. Oh, my monkey mind, you know, it's creating a big show again. Let me see what it has for me this time. Whoa, big fear coming up. Interesting, you know, zooming in. Funny how fear can be created. And I'm not wanting to how do you say? On the other hand, of course, we have to be soft and gentle. And I know a lot of people have really, really terrible, dictators in their minds, telling them to, have fear, to have anger, to have frustration, guilt, low self-esteem, unlovability. I'm not good enough. All these thoughts, which can be so horrible. So when you have that during this week, I would like to invite you as like a little homework. Try to do at least 5 minutes a day, if you can, doing this emotion meditation, and see if you can actually, sometimes touch into that during your day-to-day lives. Be courageous there. This is my little invitation for you. And then, since I don't want to leave you with all this, negative emotions, I would like to maybe go into the third kind of immeasurable. Who wants to name it? I think Andrea, you already named it a bit earlier. So maybe you can, tell me one of the other immeasurables of the 4 immeasurables, apart from loving kindness and compassion.
The joyfulness and the equanimity.
Exactly, the joyfulness. So what we need when we are very looking at all this, depressing, intimidating emotions that we're having, let's have some joy. So here, what is joy? It's the wish or aspiration for ourselves and others to never be separated from the happiness. What a wonderful thing. So here, basically, with the technique that we're going to use here is to just be happy about things that are good. We're rejoicing, and I like the word rejoicing very much. It's like a joy, and you kind of reaffirm that joy. So rejoice in our own and others' joys and virtues. The benefits here is that it helps you provide a balance, because what do we usually do? We focus very strongly on the negative. And an example that Özil likes to say very much for those who know him, he often uses the example of the mother, which, in the news, you can hear, in German we have Bild, which is like a big, very, populistic, I don't know how to say this in English, a magazine, who puts out this big dramatic news and says, and there, for example, let's say what you would hear regularly is like, mother, she shot her 2 kids, right? Horrible, terrible. But then think about it. It's a thing of a minute for this mother to kill her 2 kids. Poof, poof, done. Horrible, and yes, needs attention too. But then do you hear, mother, 25 years were caring of her 3 kids alone while working, and now all the kids go to school and manage the job and whatever. 25 years of hard work and love and all these positive things, and there's not even a single news of this, what we see in the news, right? It's kind of funny. So what do we focus on? On these small moments of negativity, and what we put our minds towards in a moment becomes the reality in that very moment. So when we put our minds to the negative things, we give it fuel. And I'm not saying we shouldn't look at them. We need to look at them in order to overcome them, but we also need a balanced approach. So therefore we need empathetic joy, or mudita in Sanskrit. So, and then also here, we still want to try to make sure that we're not doing cognitive fusion. So just because somebody does good things, it doesn't mean that this person is perfect. We're not trying to, or myself, somebody says, oh, you did so well. Or no, they don't say you did so well. They say you are amazing. But we don't want to praise people like that. If we praise people like you're amazing, you're perfect, we push in the end, we create a lot of pride in them. And pride, even though, I don't mean a good pride, I mean the arrogant kind of pride, that actually leads to more pain in the end, because they're going to be disappointed, because they're not going to hold up this perfect picture, right? So also here, with respect to praising others, praise their qualities, praise what they did well. Similarly with us, when somebody praises us, oh, you know, you did, I was so amazed and how beautiful that you did this wonderful actions. I feel so touched that you did this wonderful actions. It was really an amazing action. And then you can say, oh yeah, that was really good action. Then you're going to be inspired to continue doing them, but you're not going to get prideful. Then obstacles to that are that we start rejoicing in very unnecessary things, or sometimes even negative things. For example, rejoicing very much in, you know, the best pizza, we should be happy about what we're having, but if our objects are, you know, just pleasurable experiences, and then we believe them to be happiness, we go in the same circle of, you know, believing short-term pleasures to be actual happiness, and then we create even more suffering for us. So the antidote to that is creating loving kindness. What is real happiness that I want to get to? This is what I want to rejoice in. And then the opposite of that is jealousy, envy. You know, I don't want you to have that. I want to have that. And it's so beautiful. Thought experiment. If I would come now to you, or if somebody would come in the room, let's imagine we all know how Laksam, the center looks, right? Imagine you're sitting in the Gompa or in the meditation hall, and you sit all, you know, in a nice circle, and suddenly somebody comes into the room and gives everybody 100, I think you have francs, right? 100 francs, apart from you. How would you feel? You would be, why didn't I get? What's wrong with me? It's all about you. Instead of being happy, amazing, you didn't lose anything. Nobody took something away from you. Instead of being happy that everybody else got 100 francs, you know, you take yourself away, you take an opportunity for yourself away to be happy. That's so sad. So just think about that. So maybe instead of talking about it, we could meditate on it. Are you open for that for the last 8 minutes? And then we can stop with this positive, joyful feeling. Okay. So again, find yourself a nice and comfortable position. And again, if you find it distracting, you can close the picture in front of you or close your eyes. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance by simply keeping the back nice and straight, and at the same time allowing the body and all the muscles to be completely at ease and relaxed. And then with each out-breath, you can try to release any kind of tension or tightness. And allowing the breath to just settle into its natural rhythm. You don't have to manipulate it. Whatever way it breathes, it's okay. And for a short while, allowing your mind to come to rest in the present moment. Just resting in that spacious stillness and peace of awareness itself. So empathetic joy is rejoicing in ourselves and others' virtues and joys. So maybe first bring to mind a person that you like very much, a person that inspires you, that radiates joy and well-being. Could be a good friend, a parent, maybe even a teacher. And just think about their presence, their words and their actions. And then as you focus on this person, allow yourself to open your hearts to that person's joy, to that person's virtue and good circumstances. And take delight in it. You even can allow yourself to maybe even smile. How wonderful. Maybe think of somebody now who you know, to whom something wonderful has happened just recently. And remember the joy and delight of that person, maybe telling you. And then join into that joy. How wonderful, I'm so happy for you. Now bring to mind somebody who has many virtuous activities, like generosity, kindness. Somebody inspires you, as I said earlier. But think of their qualities. And then think also about all the people that receive benefit from those actions that they create. Maybe you have pictures in mind where people are surprised about the kindness that they were treated with. And then maybe go through your day today and where did you see kindness today? Where did you see people acting in a virtuous, kind way? Or where did you see people having positive things happening to them? And then just be happy about you having seen that. How wonderful. I'm so happy for you. And now think about your own life and go back to the earliest childhood memories that you have. And try to recollect the earliest acts of kindness that you can remember, that you've been experiencing from another person. And then go through the timeline of your life, moving from this early moments to your teenage years, up to your adult life where you're right now. And recall all the people and just allow your mind to wander and see whatever people come up who've been kind to you, supported you, help you in your life. Maybe with just a very small actions, just like opening your door, giving you a smile, giving you a hug when you most needed it. And allow yourself to just be happy about that. How wonderful. Take delight in it. And now as you breathe out, breathe out your delight and your gratitude. And with this state of gratitude and delight, we can now bring this session to an end by dedicating. So think for yourself maybe at least of one person that came up in your mind during this meditation. And think about that kindness that you received from them. Be happy about that. And think, what can I do now for you? So maybe open up your heart towards them and see how vastly you can open up your hearts further. Wanting everybody to join into that joy, into that delight, into that rejoicing, into that happiness. So that each and everybody who, just like yourself, wishes to have happiness and wishes to be free from suffering, that they actually receive that. With that in mind, we can do the dedication prayers. We can, in case you have it, do the bodhicitta. May the precious supreme bodhicitta, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. And then we can dedicate for our own teachers, using now the prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. But you can just include anybody that you find inspiring for your own self. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. You who uphold the subduer's more way, who serves as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjanath victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. And in case you have any particular dedications, you can now include them in your heart. And we can bring this session to an end. Thank you very much. In case you still have any kind of questions, you can stay. Anybody else can just leave. Otherwise, I would say we meet each other next week. And next week, as I said earlier, we're going to mainly focus on how do we actually generate meditation practice in our own day-to-day lives. How do we have our own meditation practice? How do we do analytical meditation without it being guided and so forth? So that's the main part in that. And in case you do have any particular questions or particular topics that are important for you, for me to focus on, please write that. I don't know, I don't think that you have my private messages. For those who have, please write me. For those who don't, you can, I believe, write the Laksam Center in case there are any kind of particular topics that you really, or questions that are important for me to focus on. Okay. Then, bye-bye, in case there's nothing. Have a good night.
Thank you, Farina.
Bye-bye.